Garrett Fritz here for Galaxy Girl Creations. Welcome to this month's Off the Board with Pineapple Papers. This is a YouTube hop that Crystal Barrett hosts every month, the last Wednesday of the month. And we are to take something off our Pinterest board, like this particular image of these 12 tags, and turn it into a scrapbook layout. I have decided to use these 12 photos of my grandson over the course of his first year of life. So starting with his 1 month photo, his 2 month photo, his 3 month photo, and so on, and document that first year of his life. So I started out with a 2-inch strip of white paper and or several 2-inch strips of white paper, and I have a punch from Stampin' Up, and it is a tag topper, so any 2-inch strip of paper will fit in it, and you can cut the top of a tag. So these tags are 2 inches by 3¼ inches long, and I started out by just pulling his photos and then deciding what I wanted to do for each month. Well, I started with November because that was his first month of life, and you saw that I had a bunch of papers there that are fall colors, and I have these little tiny dies that are leaves, and I decided to go ahead and run those through my little sidekick and punch a bunch of leaves out. And so those are going to be going on that very first tag. And then I decided the tag needed some color on it because I don't want all of the tags to be white, so I'm using my watercolors, and I'm just going to go with an ombre effect in this gold metallic. And then I decided I knew what I wanted for February. I wanted to go ahead and use the Paige Evans tiny heart stencil, so I used some Bow Bunny glitter paste for that. And for his July photo, I wanted a water effect because he is actually in the bathtub for this particular month's photo. And then I went ahead and used the star stencil from Paige Evans with some blue Bow Bunny glitter paste for July. So those ones were fairly easy for me to decide what to do, and that's why I started with those ones. I know I have a piece of paper for January that has kind of a swirl effect embossed on it, and that just happened to be my scrap paper already embossed. So I chose that, and then I rubbed some of the Vicki Boutin iridescent glaze over the top using a baby wipe. And I know this video is going fast. This layout took me like 4.5 hours to do. I had a lot of interruptions. I was actually at a retreat with a bunch of friends, and so I was kind of working slow because I was chatting as well. And so I apologize for everything being super fast. Otherwise, you'd be sitting here for a very long time watching. And I know I'm a little off screen in some of it, or actually a lot of it, or towards the bottom of the screen. So my apologies right off the bat for all of that. Again, I was not in my normal place. I kind of had to rig up something to go ahead and film this, but I wanted to go ahead and share it anyway. So I went ahead and left those leaves so that they are sticking up a little bit on one edge. So they are all glued on one side, but then the other side there's a little bit of dimension, and I really like that look. And then I'm going to go ahead and do December, and off camera I decided to spray this tag with some green sparkle spray from Nuvo, and I did that over my trash can, so you didn't see me spray it because I did it off camera because I didn't want to have to move everything. While that's drying, I used the Lawn Fawn grass dye, ran that through my sidekick with some green scrap paper, and created a bunch of grass strips, and I watercolored the tag for May, and I just went with a blue ombre effect and with my same watercolors that I've been using. And then for April, I sprinkled a little bit of Heidi Swapp mist over it, and I used the dark gray one. I don't have the name of it in front of me, and that's going to be for April. So right next to the blue one, to the left of that, you'll see the April one. And then I went back to the December one, kind of jumping around here. I patted it off with a little bit of paper towel, and then I punched using it's a Tim Holtz die to get those little leaves. I punched those out of some green variegated papers, a couple of different ones. One had a little bit of gold in it, and they are going to nestle behind the bells. You can see some bells there that I had die cut as well, and I used some gold mirror paper to die cut those. I have a bunch of these dies from they're from Do Crafts. They're called Dinky dies, and so I have a bunch of these in different shapes and everything. So I love how they work in the Sidekick, and I use them quite often for these kinds of projects. So I'm just layering up off in the corner there. Again, sorry I'm off screen. I'm layering up those little fronds of pine, I guess they're fronds, I don't know, the pine needles, and putting them down with the bells on top. And then I'm going back to the ones with the grass, and that is again for May. And I'm just layering up the grass, and I used a little bit of Distress ink just on the edges of the grass, the top edges, to give a little bit of added dimension. And I just adhered those down using my tape runner. And then I punched some snowflakes out of another set of dies. I used a lot of little tiny dies in here. And I'm just going to adhere those in 3 little spots around the January tag. And I didn't do much more to that January tag because the silver foiled snowflakes worked out well. I did, however, layer up some papers behind the photograph, and that's what I'm doing right now. I also layered up some papers behind most of the square photographs. There are a few that I am going to fussy cut out, but the rest of them will have some layers behind it. I will go back and add a little strip of paper behind the one in November because I didn't originally start out with any layers on that one. I will be cutting a couple of little pieces of green paper to make some stalks for some flowers, and then I used a Stampin' Up! Punch that has 3 little flowers in it to punch flowers in different colors. You can see them on the right hand side there, and then I just hand cut out some leaves out of that same green paper. And I have this mouse pad, and I am using my stylus to just kind of press down on the center of the flowers to give them a little bit of dimension, and it just kind of cups them up a little bit. And you can see to the right there that I also have I die cut out some clouds. I didn't make you sit through me die cutting all of these little tiny things. If you are into scrapbooking, you probably know how to use a die cut machine. But I can just tell you the flowers are a punch, the clouds, those are used with a die, and so is the grass. And I try to decide what I want to do with each of the photographs, whether I want to put them in the center or off to the side. I don't want them all in any one specific place, so I kind of scattered them around in different ways depending on which way he's looking in the photo and what was in the background of the photo. So I gave some dimension to those clouds. I added some foam tape behind them, and then I decided to fussy cut the photo on that one. I just thought it looked better. I thought it was kind of fun that it's kind of raining on his head. And the photo didn't have anything in the background that really was a necessity to be left in the photograph or on the page. So then I didn't want this little tiny cloud to go right on top of his head, so I decided to move everything up just a bit on the tag so that it wouldn't be overlapping onto the actual photograph. And I'm just trimming off the excess that's hanging over off the edges of the tag, and that one will be pretty much done. I am going to go back and stamp all of these with an L Studio stamp that has the month. It's a 3 letters, so it's a monthly abbreviation for each one, and I really like how it looks at the end of it. I decided to go ahead and fussy cut out February, and I believe I fussy cut out July as well, and the rest of them I think I leave as squares. So I had a really hard time figuring out what to do with March, and about that time one of my friends came over and brought up that I should have like a pot of gold, and I said, oh my gosh, I have a rainbow stamp, so you'll see that coming up pretty quickly. In the meantime, I have these Bow Bunny dies, and they are some tab tops or tab folder tops, and I use those quite often, so I decided to use those for February, and I will end up using them for July as well. And I'm going to end up running some stitching down the edge of the tabs later. I don't show that online or on this video because the sewing machine that I'm using is somebody else's machine and it's across the room. So again, I'm at a retreat, so I'm making do with what I've got. And you can see there the February stamp, and I'm going to stamp the April one right there. Those are the L Studio stamp, and I really like those. So I want to go ahead and get those on as many as I can at the moment, and I'll go back and finish that after I get the rest of the tags done. And I decide to, the edge of those tabs, I decide to pop those up, the top edge, onto foam tape, but the bottom edge is held on by the Nuvo glue. And you can see my tweezers there are holding the photograph on because it takes a little bit of time for it to dry on top of that mixed media, and I want to make sure it sticks well. Now for July, I originally thought I was going to use that ice cream cone because that's summer and it always makes me think of ice cream, but I didn't use that. I ended up using more tabs. And then I decided to put some little cupped floral or flower sequins in the middle of the flowers for the May tag, just to kind of finish it off. And I know I'm kind of going back and forth between all of the tags, but I'm trying to think about the ones that I'm not sure about. So I'm thinking about those as I'm working on the other ones. Now for September, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I ended up using this stencil and some Nuvo paste, or Nuvo embellishment mousse, and I just used it with a stenciling brush and tapped it through the stencil. And the reason I used that stencil is, well, September makes me think of school, and that chain link kind of made me think of school. I didn't really have anything else in mind for it. And then August, you can see I'm off screen there again, and I just did the same thing as I did with July, or I'm sorry, with May, and I just went with an ombre watercolor, and that worked out really well. August makes me think of sun. Here in California, we do usually have hot Augusts, and so that's why I went with that. And I'm gonna put that sun die cut on there as well. That I think is also another one of the dinky dies from Do Crafts. And then I hand cut out a pot of gold, or the pot for the pot of gold, and then I'm using this stamp. It's a rainbow stamp. I think it's from the Wandering Planner stamps, but I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that one. If it's something that you're interested in knowing, you can drop me a note down below and I'll look it up for you. But I just stamped a portion of it. It does have the full rainbow with clouds and everything, but I only wanted the actual rainbow. And then I put some more of that gold shiny paper from the bells behind the little pot there, so it's got some gold sticking out of it. And then I sprinkled some Heidi Swapp Gold Color Shine up above it so it looks like there's sprinkles of gold. And that's all for the March tag. And I really do like how that one ended up coming out. And it was the one I was least sure about. So all in all, it might actually be my favorite. Besides those clouds. I love the clouds. And then I am sticking down the stuff on July the same way I did as February, using my tweezers, holding them on to dry with that mixed media. I am adding a little rubber ducky to the June tag. And that one I had to borrow a rubber ducky from someone in the room because I didn't have one. And then I die cut these little birds on a wire, and I don't know where I got that die from. I've had it for a very long time, but it is a die, and I just went ahead and die cut them to add a little bit of black to that September one. And I really like how that looks. And I know September could also be school, but he's not in school, so I didn't really think about doing school for that one. And then October is his birthday, and so I went with a reverse ombre. Well, it's ombre still, but it started with the dark at the bottom. Originally, I had a cupcake die cut out that says Make a Wish, but I decided to add some balloons instead. I really like having that colorful, the colorful papers on there with his picture. It is his birthday month, and so I wanted to just give it more color than the cupcake was giving. and I ended up using some thread and tying it around the balloons so the thread is hanging down a little bit loose. You'll see that in the close-ups at the end. And at this point, I think I'm off camera looking for some paper to put all of these tags on. So in the meantime, let me just remind you to take a look at the links down below and go check out all of the other ladies that are playing along this month and see what they are using as their inspiration from their Pinterest boards, and then see how they turned it into their own creation. So I found some old My Mind's Eye paper, and it's this gray wood grain, and I decided to go ahead and put all of my tags on that. I really like how it looks, and on the tags I went ahead and used some distress ink like around the ones that have the white background. So February, and then July and April and June, they all have a little bit of distress ink, and January as well, just so that they pop off the page a little bit more than leaving them white on white. September as well. So I decided to go ahead and line them up vertically so that they are perfect, but then horizontally I wanted them a little bit wonky, so they are not perfectly straight, and that worked out really well because my title, if they were straight, the actual letters from the title would have covered up some of the tag that I wanted visible. So by doing it so that they're staggered, you can read the title and you can still see everything on the tag without any problem. And then the title is A Year in His Life, and I use these little tiny tile stickers from Chamel's box of crayons, and Year and Life are both off of one of her sticker sheets, and the word year is not actually on one of the sticker sheets. I used the word create for the E, A, and R, and then Y I think it was the word day or something like that. Anyway, there was a Y in one of the other words. So I just put them all together and it worked out great. And then I'm adding a little bit of rickrack to that January tag, and I'm going to use some thread around the base of it to hold it together. And I used yellow on the August tag, but I'm going to change that over to be a black and white baker's twine, and then I'm going to add a yellow one to March, a yellow baker's twine. And the reason I decided to use the baker's twine for the ones in the second and third row was because the rickrack stuck up straight and kind of blocked the photos on the rows up above, so I didn't use any rickrack on any of the other rows, even though I considered it. We are getting pretty close to the end of the layout. I am going to find another piece of paper to back the entire thing on. I'm going to use a navy blue wood grain, also from My Mind's Eye. It's actually the same wood grain, I believe, as the paper that everything's mounted on, but it is in navy blue, tone on tone, and you saw me just lay it down there real quick. I am also going to ink all the way around the edges of both the paper that everything's on and then the blue. I'm going to use some blue distress ink and chipped sapphire and just go around that just to give a little bit more dimension. And we are pretty close to the end of the layout, so stick around for the close-ups. Those will be coming up pretty quick, and there's quite a few of them because there's a lot on this layout. It really felt like I did 12 little mini layouts, and again, it took me hours to do this, but I really enjoyed it, and I love how it turned out. So again, check out the ladies down below and leave us any comments or questions you may have. Thanks so much for watching.